Well, I have walked some trails in my lifetime, but isn't it spectacular? This is the Great Wall of China. China is vast. It's got the greatest mountain range, the Himalayas, the highest plateau, more caves than any other country, and 3 of the longest rivers to be found on Earth. In this series, I'm going to search out some of China's furthest corners. This is a little bit dicey going in here. Discovering the unexpected and thrilling life that's to be found here. I think this is your snow leopard.
Oh, look at that one.
Look at that one. On the trail of the unique animals, landscapes, and people of wild China. Hey! My journey around China starts here in its capital city. Beijing is home to over 21 million people. In this program, I'm going to travel right from the heart of the city to the very edges in search of the incredible wildlife that's to be found in one of the largest cities on Earth. What's the Chinese for mind your backs? I don't know. China's capital city sits on the edge of the North China Plain. It's protected from the mountains to the north and west by the Great Wall of China, which is where I'm heading after I explore the city. Beijing is huge. It's 10 times the size of Greater London. It's a vibrant hubbub of new and old. It was the home of China's emperors, and today it boasts hundreds of imperial parks, green spaces, gardens, and river walks. All of them are a popular refuge from the hustle and bustle of city life. And even in the midst of Beijing's winter, some of the city's residents are getting away from it all with an icy plunge. Cities as big as this pose a real problem for wildlife. In fact, there's a fragile relationship here between the wild and the human residents. But conservationists are making great strides in finding workable solutions. It's actually quite exciting. Over the past 40 years, Beijing has been subject to an intense tree replanting program to help with pollution. In that time, over 200 million trees have been planted here. Throughout the city, you can see wonderful trees like this. And if you have a close look, like this red pine here, you'll see that nearly every tree has a label on it with a code. And you can look up, using that code, who is sponsoring this tree. And nearly every tree is sponsored by one citizen or another. It's wonderful. As well as helping to make the city greener, the tree planting has also been a bonus for birds. Lovely, some woodpeckers there. Of course, that's the other benefit of having all these trees, is it increases the biodiversity and the habitat for bird species, which is great for the resident birds, but more importantly, it's important for the migratory species. And there are some birds that come here, this is their Costa del Sol, and they'll hang out here through the winter, and there are others that use this as like a service station as they head even further south in search of somewhere a little warmer.
I'm heading off to meet a team of people who keep an eye out for the well-being of the city's flying visitors.
This is the Beijing Raptor Rescue Centre, and in many ways they're on the front line of conservation here in Beijing.
I'm here to meet Dr. Zhu Li, part of a team of vets from the International Fund for Animal Welfare, who have treated over 5,000 birds in the last 20 years, returning over half of them to the wild. As I arrive, they're hard at work on an injured owl found at Beijing Airport.
So what we've got here is a long-eared owl, and the birds are getting a health check. They're being very quick and efficient to minimise the bird's familiarity with people. It needs to retain its sense of wildness if it's to be successfully reintroduced to the wild.
When we think of raptors, we think of big birds like eagles, kestrels and falcons, but owls are powerful predators as well.
If you get a chance, take a look at the claws, because they're night predators. They have their front claws and their rear claws set like this, like 2 and 2, so their prey can't escape in the darkness. Whereas, of course, most raptors in daylight have got 3 and 1. One of the owl's specialisations, and they have very, very soft feathers on their wings so that they can fly silently in the dark. Beautiful bird. That bird was found at the airport. Was it injured?
A small soft tissue wound on the right shoulder.
So it had a soft tissue injury on the right shoulder.
Yes.
And so how quickly would you ideally like to get the birds released back into the wild?
Maybe this week.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Dr. Li told me more about the common injuries she sees in her patients.
很多原因，有的是我们其实接救最大的还是夏天那会儿的时候。
They are
有很多小鸟
various.
追
We
潮
have a lot of baby birds that fall from their nests in the summer. In the winter, we see a lot of birds who are weak or injured from their long migration.
有虚弱，包括有一些可能会有这种人为的这种伤害。
Do you ever tag any of the birds that you release back into the wild with GPS trackers?
会。
Yes.
And how far have some of these birds travelled?
大狂已经
About 2.5 years ago, we released
去
a
年的3
buzzard.
月3月份。
Now it is in Mongolia.
现在应该是它基本上放了之后就一直在外蒙。
Incredibly, that's over 2,000 miles away.
Wonderful to be that close to a long-eared owl. It's a shame about the circumstances, but these are the lucky ones. They're here in this wildlife hospital, effectively being very, very well cared for. Fabulous.
Beijing's green spaces play a vital role in serving the needs of both its human and animal residents.
Beijing has got dozens of parks and gardens that are important havens for wildlife, but I would argue that this is one of the most important. This is Nanhaizan, and this was established on what was formerly an imperial hunting reserve, and it has a unique story in the annals of conservation associated with one particular animal.
For almost 1,000 years, this was the imperial hunting ground for China's emperors, and it was forbidden to enter it. The prey animals within it were protected, especially this one.
This is what I've come to see. These are Père David's deer, and they are almost certainly my favourite deer because they have the most incredible story of conservation success.
They're a strange-looking deer. The Chinese name for them is Ye Pu Shang, which means none of four. That's because, according to tradition, they have the feet of a cow, the head of a horse, the neck of a camel, and the tail of a donkey.
This species literally came to the brink of extinction. Through overhunting, through long periods, the numbers were reduced until only a tiny proportion were left here in this very park in Beijing.
In 1900, the imperial hunting grounds were destroyed by war, and the David's deer became extinct in China.
Fortunately, a small number of the deer had been traded illegally to Europe, and the Duke of Bedford took them to Woburn Abbey, where he managed to successfully breed them. Back in the mid-1980s, some of those deer were brought back here to China, where they are, of course, thriving today, as you can see with these youngsters. It's a fantastic story of success. It just shows you that even when a species is on the very verge of total extinction, we can sometimes, by the right intervention, bring it back from the brink. But this has to be the perfect end to my first day in Beijing. The Raptor Center are going to release some of the birds I saw earlier today.
Hi, Rui.
Hey,
Hi.
how you doing? All right.
Yeah,
Nearby on the edge of the city, I meet up with bird vet Dr. Li.
Hello. Are these the birds you checked this morning?
Yes.
That's great.
Both of them.
Both of them?
Yeah.
This one's eager to get out.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the spot, is it? Here we go.
Okay. First, wait a moment first.
Okay. Oh, you tilt the box.
1, 2, 3.
You flew well.
Back to the tree. 1, 2, 3.
Wonderful. Long Yidao returning to the wild areas of the city of Beijing. It's amazing just how much wildlife there is here in the inner part of Beijing. But now I'm going to head to the outer limits to see something completely different.
I'm off to explore the wild side of the Great Wall of China.
Well, it's a really cold morning. Judging by the crunching of the snow, I'd put the temperature at -15. And I'm on my way to see one of the great wonders of the world. Can't wait. It's just up ahead of me. Well, there are no prizes for working out where I am. This is, of course, the Great Wall of China, and these are my first steps upon it.
The Great Wall of China is one of the 7 wonders of the world. It's the northern frontier of ancient China, built through deserts and mountains. And winter is the best time to see it, cutting across the landscape. Here at Gubaiku, northwest of Beijing, it's been engineered along the ridges of narrow precipices with sheer drops on either side. The local name for the wall here is the Stone Dragon. Legend has it that a dragon flying over China got tired and flopped onto the ground here. In reality, it was started by China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, over 2,000 years ago.
This is an incredible structure. As far as the eye can see, you can see it snaking over the mountains there. There's a loneliness here. There's a feeling of isolation. Maybe the cold and the wind is creating that emotion.
Emperor Qin Shi Huang built the wall using conscripted labor, and it's estimated over 1 million people died building it during his reign. Some people say it's the longest cemetery on Earth.
William.
Right.
Nice to meet you.
Morning.
Chilly though, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I was thinking of stopping and having a brew.
I'll join you. Thank you.
Dr. William Lindsay is one of the world's leading experts on the Great Wall.
Not a bad view, is it?
Awesome.
So, William, tell me about the Great Wall of China.
It's not as straightforward as you would think. Large parts of China, or all of China, was occupied and ruled by nomadic groups from the north. They rode their horses superbly, they were superb archers, and they absolutely ran rings around the Chinese. So this was the answer to stop nomadic intrusion. This wall is 5,500 miles long. It's the Great Wall as the world knows it today. But the amazing thing is, before this wall, there were 15 other Great Walls of China going back as far as 300 BC.
300
Yeah.
BC.
So this is the new one. This is the most recent one. It only dates from the mid-1300s to the mid-1600s.
Give me a picture of what this wall was like when it was in its heyday.
Well, you know, 400 years ago, 1620, if you'd have walked along this wall, you would probably meet round about 120 men per mile of wall.
Per mile?
Yeah, because you see these towers made the wall work. They were full of men. That tower up there would have contained about 20 men. And the towers, although some of them are ruined now, they're at every peak, dip and turn along the line of the wall. And the idea was that guards in adjacent towers should be able to cover the wall in between with their overlapping arrow or crossbow bolt fire.
And so was the wall designed in any way to facilitate the use of those weapons?
Well, absolutely. You'll notice it doesn't only occupy that high ground, it twists and turns. This isn't random. By twisting and turning the wall, it allowed the defenders to fire at the enemy from various angles, not just in their faces.
That's interesting.
First and foremost is a barrier against cavalry on their horses. And secondly, as it became more continuous, it became a signalling line. And the more the wall became continuous, it delivered a third purpose. It became a road over the mountaintops because it was continually evolving.
It's incredible, absolutely incredible.
You know, when I walk the Great Wall of China, I feel the superb organization, the endurance, hard-working spirit of the Chinese people.
Today, far from being a defence, the wall has become a haven for wildlife.
I have to say this is a bit cheeky. I'm going to use the Great Wall of China as the world's biggest windbreak so that I can sit quietly out of that chilly wind and look for some wildlife. It's nice at last to be out of that wind, and here in the sunshine it's actually quite warm. This whole area was once covered in forest. Then back in the 1950s it was deforested. But today, the trees are being put back, and with them the biodiversity is increasing, the habitat's improving, and the wildlife's returning. And sitting here now out of the wind, I can at last start to hear the different songbirds in the area. I've seen red-billed blue magpies and Pear David's laughing thrush. Just lovely.
And also returning to the wall are some much bigger beasts who would have roamed these hills in the wall's early days. I'm meeting conservationist Huang Chao-wen, who is planning to rewild this part of the wall with one of China's biggest cats.
Thank you so much for coming up to join me on the wall today. So tell me about the Bring the Leopard Back Home project.
So when we talk about leopards, we're talking about North China leopards. So it's a unique subspecies in China. They live in Beijing, like for thousands of years.
As the forest was cut down, the leopard population retreated into the mountains, further away from the city. Now, Chao Wen wants to reverse that.
So now the project is to bring leopards back to a city of 21 million people, which is quite a challenge.
Chao Wen's plan is to relocate wild leopards from other parts of China to this part of the Great Wall.
But already you're looking for the leopards that you might be able to use.
Yeah, we have a project based in Shanxi province, like 380 kilometers from Beijing. We found leopard populations there.
So that'll be the donor population for
Yeah,
Beijing.
yeah.
And do you put trail cameras out so that you can watch the leopards there?
Yeah, of course. It's quite amazing, the numbers there.
Is that what you've got here, some footage of?
Yeah, you could see the leopards there.
Wow! That's amazing.
Yeah.
The North China leopard is still endangered, but Chao Wen is hopeful that the population is slowly increasing as awareness grows.
What are the challenges you face?
Oh, a lot of challenges, like there is not enough food for leopards.
As the forest re-establishes itself, it will encourage other animals like deer, wild boar, hog badgers, and weasel back to the Great Wall. Over time, these prey populations will be enough to support the wildcats.
So you've got to restore the whole habitat and the prey species before you can bring the leopard back.
Yeah,
Benefits.
exactly. Yeah.
Bringing the leopards back is a huge undertaking that demonstrates China's ambitious conservation plans.
You know, from ancient times to modern times, Beijing has the most extraordinary wildlife story. But the thing that really strikes me here is the scale on which things are done. You can get a sense of that from the Great Wall. And you see it again today with the millions of trees that have been planted by the people of Beijing in their pursuit of wildlife conservation. It's early days, but already the work that's been done here is going to bear fruit for generations to come.
Next time, I'm exploring China's Amazon.
It's a little dangerous. An elephant could literally be just a few meters in the thickets.
On the trail of the wild Asian elephant.